I don't know what you've heard or experienced in parenting teenagers, but I've parented 20 teenagers and 40 kids, and I want to say that parenting teenagers is the best.
I would agree. I think that's weird to a lot of folks.
Yeah, well, teenagers in general have a bad reputation for being difficult.
You can't parent teenagers the same way that you parent little kids.
If you're watching and you're like, well, that probably was easy for you because you already had the skills, or, you were married to a therapist or whatever this. No, we had no experience. We learned it from other mentor couples, but we grow in skill through engaging things.
I'm excited for you to share the pieces of what you have learned, because you're like an exceptional mom.
If I could conceptualize it in a nutshell, the biggest piece is
people just hearing that on the face of it, like 40 kids, holy smokes, are they Amish? Or what? How in the world is this? They don't look Amish, but how do they have parent 40 kids? Well, you have to check out one of the other episodes to hear about our story with foster care and adoption. But yeah, no, it's a true thing. We've had a lot of kiddos, all different ages, 4 bio kiddos, lots of foster kiddos, 5 adopted kiddos. So yeah, we have been around the parenting track a few times with all different ages. And yeah, I would agree. Teenagers are really fantastic. I think that's weird to a lot of folks.
Yeah, well, teenagers in general have a bad reputation for being difficult.
Yeah, well, you can't parent teenagers the same way that you parent little kids.
Yeah.
And so I think there's some things that are scary about teenagers. The risks are higher.
The risks are higher for sure.
Little kids, you can control their environment, you can control where they're at, you can kind of make them do some things. And so you can keep them safe in a way that is more challenging or impossible with older kids. And so there's a dynamic there of the out of controlness that's super scary. And the consequences of the choices are high.
Yeah.
It can be life and death. And, teenagers' brains aren't fully cooked and developed. And so the judgment isn't always great. So they're in semi-adult bodies.
Yes.
With an underdeveloped brain and the potential to get themselves into situations that can change the course of the rest of their life and can potentially end their life. And there's a limit to how much you can control that as a parent. And that's terrifying.
Yeah.
It's really scary. And a lot of times there's a tendency for parents, they're not making that transition well from little kids to teenagers, to try to double down on the tactics that work with little kids with the teenagers, and it works doubly bad.
Yeah, it backfires.
It backfires, which makes for not only a scary time, but also a tumultuous relational time, and it becomes a source of lots of worry and sleepless nights and fights and conflict and stress, and all of those things are, I think, what give reason teenagers a bad rap, why people get stressed out about it or worried about it.
For sure.
Or those that have a bad experience with it, why they have a bad experience. But, it didn't have to be like that. It's not been our experience. We've had some really tough, challenging teenagers.
Yeah, I'm not to say that it hasn't been difficult, because it has definitely been difficult.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. when you're fostering teenagers, they have all sorts, like, it's hard parenting your bio kiddos, the teenage years. When you get foster and adoptive kiddos, and they have all sorts of trauma that's a part of their stories, and you're like eating somebody else's lunch while you're like trying to parent these teenagers and deal with all sorts of wounds that they have in their story that you didn't cause, but you have to deal with and navigate. Like, it's definitely challenging under all circumstances.
Yeah, and
but it doesn't have to be terrible.
You don't have the relationship capital that you do with your bio kiddos to help bridge that gap.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to share the pieces of what you have learned, because you're like an exceptional mom. You're an exceptional mom to teenagers, and really, I say that as a doting husband, right? And as a dad that's kind of watched you be a mom, but I also say it from as a professional. As a licensed professional counselor and in therapy with lots of families and navigated lots of situations, I've got kind of that hat to put on also, and able to go, at a technical level, at a clinical level, the way you show up as a parent is exceedingly healthy, and installs really good things in kiddos, and it's part of why your experience has been what it is. But it's not as much from, well, I'll just let you kind of share, because I think you got a lot to share about how you get there, and really the things that you can do before your kiddos are teenagers that set up the teen years to be different. Because it actually, the best teen year experiences, there's a lot of work that
Prep
goes
work.
in. Yeah, prep work that happens before that time. So I'm excited to hear.
Yeah. I think if I could conceptualize it in a nutshell, the biggest piece is the safety and connection piece.
Mm-hmm.
The trying to make space for teenagers to be their real selves. And even before that, trying all along the way as our bio kids were growing up to honor who they really were rather than who I thought they would be or wanted them to be, which gave them safety and space to be their real selves. And even as teenagers, listen, I know that our teenagers, even when they present we're just doing all the right things that you told us to do, not that they all present like that, some more than others, but they have their secrets. They have their things that they're not sharing or keeping, they don't want to share with me. They don't think it's right. But on the whole, there is this trust that mom sees me, mom knows me, our relationship is safe no matter what. And so I have always tried to establish that by giving them space to have their own real feelings about things, even when I didn't agree or like it. And, honoring this tricky balance between you do get to have your own space and feelings, and I also have to say no to what those feelings would like to happen in this situation, because as your mom, I don't think that's the right thing. And I think for me, as I think about that, it's is that a matter of, it needs to be important. It needs to be important for me as a parent to say no to something. I need to have a good reason for their safety or benefit, or for my boundaries or my integrity, my feeling right about it as a parent. I feel like when we were growing up,
I want to pause there if I can. Just because there's a lot in what you're saying. So I just want to slow it down a little bit, because there's just you're dropping all sorts of really cool pieces of wisdom.
Okay.
And I don't want to get lost because there's so much of it there. And so I just want to draw attention to a couple of pieces of it.
I'll just ramble and then you can flesh it out.
I think there's, from a clinical standpoint, let's talk in our model, we look at these 5 developmental domains that people grow in, right? And we grow in them through life-giving experiences related to those domains that develop our capacities in those domains. And in an ideal world, those experiences, a bulk of them happen during the developmental years of like 0 to 20 years old or so, that these experiences are happening and they give us the capacities to engage adult life, and they continue to develop across the lifespan. But there's significant life-giving experiences that if we have them, we develop the capacities for navigating adulthood confidently and healthily. And if we don't have those experiences, it causes difficulties for us in adulthood. So one of those domains is connection, which is our capacity to form safe, secure, trusting relationships with people.
And it's really the foundational domain for everything.
Yeah, it's foundational for humans because we're designed by God to need one another and to live in community and to not do life alone.
Yeah.
And so our capacity to connect with and trust others and form bonds with others is a primary capacity that affects everything else in life. It's very nerdy and I think interesting. But in the studies around happiness and the studies around well-being, that the number one mediating factor is the quality of a person's relationships. Even when it comes to like health and the studies they call, all-cause mortality studies.
Yeah.
Right. And so like
the research is actually wild at how much how much it affects our lives.
Yeah. And so like in the all-cause mortality studies, where they look at the reasons why people die, all-cause mortality is death. So every reason a person can die, right? And in these massive studies, looking at like 400,000 participants across multiple countries and hospital systems, that there's a mediating factor of the quality of people's relationships that's something like 50%, meaning you are 50% less likely to die from anything if you have high quality relationships in your life.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
No, it's amazing.
From getting struck by lightning to eaten by an alligator or dying of cancer, all cause mortality, you're 50% more likely to survive.
Yep.
Is the other way to put it.
Yeah.
50% less likely to die, 50% more likely to survive any possible thing that could kill you if you have strong relationships in your life. In any given calendar year, you're 26% less likely to die if you have high quality relationships in your life. So just every sphere, Harvard Flourishing Study, it's got one of the longest longitudinal studies, Harvard Adult Human Development Study, longest longitudinal studies in existence, following cohort of people from teenage years all the way through death. And it's in their second and third generation now. It's following their kids and grandkids. But number one outcome for financial success, for enjoyment in life, all those things, quality of the relationships in their life. So this connection piece is like the core thing that everything else builds off of it. And so you're talking about the things that you do and have done to like prioritize the relationship.
Yeah.
And bringing it back to the teenager piece, we talked about there's this axiom that rules without relationship equals rebellion. And a lot of the rebellion that we see in teenage years is the application and the tightening down of rules in the absence of solid relationship.
Yeah.
And it creates rebellion. And so this relational stuff And maybe you could just repeat what you said and say a little bit more about, how you have put in effort, both with the kiddos before they were teenagers, but then also when we were fostering, we had kiddos come in as teenagers, and it's the first time they're in our home is at that age. And so we didn't have the luxury of that background. And I think that's important because some people are going to watch this and be like, my kids are already teenagers. And so am I just hosed because, there were things that I maybe could have done earlier, didn't do. Like, can you speak to what you did both with our bio kiddos before they were teens and the foster kiddos that came in as teens?
So with our bio kiddos before they were teens, I think I would say that it was really important to me to notice their individual propensities for things that were hard for them or things that they valued, or like when we were growing up, there was very much children should be, I don't know that children should be seen and not heard was quite right, but first time obedience without question. You didn't ask, you just did it. And that did not ever feel right in my nervous system. Like, yes, children should obey. We want to teach them that. It's a biblical principle. It's important. But sometimes, a lot of times, there are things in their bodies or environments that complicates that for them. So instead of being like, you just need to do this no matter what, it was like, help me understand where you are, or trying to understand what was going on with them, and then helping support them to do the thing that they needed to do. Like sewing these pieces into them so that they would have the internal framework to do the next thing that they needed to do, rather than it being like a distant thing, like you just need to figure it out because this is what I said. And so that built a lot of safety and trust. And, I had no like strategic framework for that. I just knew what felt right in connection with me. And that was how I prioritized it and how I showed up in that space, because I could sense when I was just like, you need to do this, in their little faces and their body language, like it was breaking connection. There was something wrong. And so.
Yeah. I think that prioritizing the connection and slowing down the process in order to kind of navigate life challenges, discipline, direction, correction, while maintaining connection was something that you intuitively knew the importance of and did in a way that I didn't. Like in the early years of parenting, you did not have much support from me in that regard. That I had all sorts of woundings in my own connection domain.
Yeah.
And that I had gaps and wounds from my own story that really made relationships challenging in general, made our relationship challenging, made parenting challenging for me in regards to that. And it really wasn't until years later, and me finding my own healing and doing my own work and finding healing around things in that domain in my life, that I could then recognize the wisdom that God had given you about how to navigate that with our kids. And so, I came very much at a different perspective and felt like you were too soft and that it was too fluffy, and that, I had a harder and more stricter kind of approach and mindset, and it was more harsh kind of in my coming at things, which created a lot of tension between us because it was so different than your approach. And I think it's a real gift and a blessing that that you had that and I didn't have that to give.
Yeah.
We can't give what we don't have. And I didn't have it because of the wounds and gaps in my own life that wouldn't get filled in for years, probably more than a decade into us being married and parenting before I really found healing in those things. And there's this grace, I think, that in our home, in our family, I was going graduate school and I was starting the ministry that we have with my counselor online and, doing academic work, doing business building, organizational building, seeing clients. Like I was far less involved in our kids' younger age
Yeah.
in the day-to-day parenting. You stayed at home with them and had we were grateful to be able to do that as a family. But the part of the result of that was you had far more influence in our kids' development, and they were getting those nutritions, those life-giving experiences around connection that was developing those capacities that then we can see now in the ages that they are, what a huge deal that is.
And it feels so kind of God because for a long time in those seasons, because all the voices around me were like, you need to be more strict. Not just you, but like that was just the prevailing voice in the Christian space that I was a part of. Like, you're letting your kids be wild. I felt so much shame throughout those years. Like I was screwing something up when the kids didn't obey and I could not bring myself to spank them because it didn't feel right in my body in those moments to do it. I felt like failure. That was really, really hard and sad. And it wasn't until, I don't know, 3 years ago when our bio kids started getting to these older ages and I was actually experiencing the fruit of my failure as a young mom, which was having kids that were confident in themselves and their own judgment and good people. And we had a good relationship as teenagers. Now, there is a little gap in there with each kiddo that it's like, you are so annoying. I cannot stand it. And it was scary with the first bio kiddo. And then the second, I was like, maybe it's going to be okay.
School years are hard.
By the third, I was like, okay, I just got to buckle up and endure for a few years and then you'll be back. But it feels like such a grace and it feels so good on this other side that I'm like, oh my gosh, the way that the Holy Spirit, the way that God wired me, my intuition from the Holy Spirit was actually right and is bearing such delightful fruit.
Yeah.
It feels, I think it feels both really joyful and sad for the younger me that struggled so much and felt so much shame and so lost.
Yeah. If I have sadness or regrets in our story, one of the largest ones was my inability and immaturity that didn't allow me to recognize the value of those things that God had placed in you for my benefit, for our kids' benefit, and that of our family. And I just undervalued that, significantly. I just was too ignorant and immature to recognize how precious that was and what a gift it was to our family. So I have sadness around that, but in gratitude for your strength of being who you are.
Yeah.
Without a lot of support in it. And so that's, a big deal. I think, and if you're watching and listening to this, just to give you a picture, an idea, like some of the research around like grit and raising kids, there's this need for high standards and warmth.
Mm-hmm.
And that in the either without the other creates lopsidedness in kiddos. And so you see that where there's high warmth, low standards, you get some problems that emerge from that. High standards, low warmth, you get real problems for that. And I think one of the things that, worked within our home is we were different. And, if we were going to characterize our parenting, you had really high warmth and fairly low standards, kind of in terms of expectations around kiddos.
In terms of expectations around responsibilities, but high standards around expectations around relational pieces.
Yeah. And I think that was a shared value that we had.
Yes.
I had high standards and expectations in all different domains.
Yeah.
Unrelenting, really. It's just my own pathology, my own brokenness, my own immaturity. I had unrelenting standards for myself that were not good for me, but also I imposed those unrelenting standards on you and on our kids in ways that were over the top and not good for them also. So I'm not advocating for that, but I'm also highlighting how imperfect parents can do this with God's grace and being dependent on Him to lead. That we had our own brokenness, and we were broken in different ways. So we don't come at this kind of talk around parenting to be like, we have it all together. We've always had it all together. We've just parented perfectly, and that's why we've got the outcomes that we have. We're actually very broken.
Very broken.
Yeah, and struggled with self-doubt and tension between us for just not seeing things the same way and wrestling with stuff. And so it wasn't because it just was easy for us or that we just had perfect models to work with. I would say that we both came into parenting where our parents didn't have to give to us a lot of things that we needed. And neither of us wanted to parent the way that we were parented. We saw the gaps in that. And so we knew a couple of ways not to do it, but there are millions of ways not to do it.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a clear picture of how to do it and really much felt like we were stumbling through doing the best that we could to try to figure it out. And read a lot and watched videos and got counsel from mentor couples and had to pray through those things, what to take and what to keep and what to not hold on to. Like there's a process personally of our own growth and development, and our willingness to lean in our own growth and development is what helped us be able to do what we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do.
Yeah, it feels peaceful and like a relief in a lot of ways on this side of things. But it was an arduous journey. It was painful and long and challenging. And I mean, I'm so grateful for the personal development, and I'm grateful to actually be able to see the fruit, because there was fruit all along, but I couldn't see the fruit in the middle of the struggle.
Yeah. And then, I mean, if you listen to this, because you hear Cassie kind of talk about some things, and I just want to add some more details or information so that you get a clear picture. But, we were a family that believed in spanking, and that we had glue sticks and wooden spoons and The kids can.
We had more
their
instruments
stories.
than our children ever got spanked with them, but they were there.
And so it's not that we philosophically were against those things or that wasn't part of our parenting, because it definitely was a part of our parenting. And the more dominant component, particularly from your parenting, I tend to be more impatient and shorter and quicker to the spoon or the glue stick or the hand than, as I reflect back, was helpful.
Yeah.
And had more to do with my impatience
Yeah,
than it did that was the best course of action
for sure.
in those scenarios. Whereas you were a lot more patient, and because of that, you stayed with and tried to keep the connection.
Yeah.
And prioritize the connection, which helped build that capacity for connection in each of our kids. But you also did a really tremendous job, and you described it earlier, and allowing for independence, or that second domain developmentally that we talk about, the ability for them to have their own thoughts, feelings, and opinions, for them to be kind of their own person apart from you or I, and that was a high priority to you, to allow them to see the world differently, to show up in the world differently than us, and maybe different how we would prefer them to at times, but not without boundaries. You talk about the reality domain, so that third domain, that it wasn't without limits.
For sure.
That there was, especially, I think this was a key cornerstone of our parenting philosophy, is if we were going to major on the majors and minor on the minors, and what were the majors, and we went back to the Gospels, we looked at the scriptures and go, what was of highest priority to Jesus? And it was about loving God and about loving your neighbor. And all the other commandments are summarized in those. So if we're going to simplify our parenting and say, what are we going to make a big deal about? Right? We're going to make a big deal about how we treat one another. We're going to, as siblings, how they treat each other, as we showed up in the world.
Yeah.
And so if there were going to be, if the hammer was going to come down, if they
were going to have to sit and talk about something, it was going to be about things with each other.
I want to come back to that in a minute, because that's just another key thing that we did and that you did a lot of, particularly with our teenagers, and I think is super valuable. And so I want to come back to that in just a sec. But even when they were little and at all ages, there's a lot of grace and a lot of patience and a lot of space for a lot of things. But if you show up and treat people poorly in a way that doesn't honor their dignity, doesn't honor their value with your words or your actions, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And there's going to be consequences as a result of that. And that kind of matrix, I think, served us really well, and it really created some cool humans that the adults in their life, the people that see them and view, this would even translate into like our school meetings. Like, academics matter. We think they're important. We college educated folks, we think that they're, education is a valuable thing. Not that college is for everybody, but we're not against education. But when it came to like school meetings and getting updates from teachers and stuff, we cared about the academics and wanted our kids to apply themselves, with diligence to it. But what was most important is, how do they show up with you as a teacher? How do they show up with their peers? Are they respectful of other humans? Are they respectful of you as leadership in this? And what we wanted to hear and what we did hear is that they were really good humans. And some of them were better academics than others, but they were good humans. And I felt like, and we felt like,
we won.
we won. Yeah, like you can be really good at academics and bad as a human, and that doesn't honor the Lord, and life doesn't go well for you.
No.
And you can be really good human and terrible at academics and be really successful in life
really
and in the
happy.
kingdom and really happy and honor the Lord.
Yes.
And so we were going to just make that priority number one above everything else.
Yeah. And that's never been that big of a challenge, I think, because of the relationships that were already established at home.
Mhm.
That was a natural outflowing of those relationships.
Yeah, it was an outflow of what we cultivated
Mhm.
in the relationships in the home and at home. So there's a connection piece, the independence piece of allowing them to grow into their own person and respecting and appreciating and valuing the ways they were different from each other and from us, and allowing space for that and space to build skills, take risks. No, we're not hovering parents, but we're closer to free range kind of parents, and allowing kids to have experiences and take risks within a
Reasonable amount of safety.
a large play box,
Yeah.
a large sandbox that still had fences that kept protecting, but were allowed those kinds of risks to take place, and thus confidence to grow, and independence, capacity to navigate the world, face challenges, not be afraid of the world, but also have reality, especially as it pertains to realistic expectations and limits in relationship, and what is okay and not okay, and how we treat one another, and respecting others' boundaries, and all of that kind of jazz. But we did that with verbal instruction, we did that with correction, we did that with glue sticks, we did that with timeouts, and as kiddos gained language, we and I say we because we both did this, but you did like 80% of it for sure.
Yeah.
But we made kiddos have hard conversations with each other.
Especially like our bio kiddos grew up doing this. They have less need of this than our teenagers that we had through foster care.
Yeah, because they just internalize it from observing it, and they're with us for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
And so we did have to spend as much time on it with them as we did kids that came to us as teenagers.
Yes. And so we used this tool given to us by another mentor couple, and we called it Family Jam.
Family Jam.
That's what they called it. And we would make everybody sit together and talk through whatever problem. We had a little cute duck. And if you weren't holding the duck, then you didn't get to talk.
Yep.
And each person got to say their whole experience, their whole truth of the situation, what they felt like actually happened. And then we would make the other person respond with, what I think I hear you saying is this. Is that right? And we always made them take ownership for their piece first. Like how did you show up in this situation that made it difficult?
Yeah. So there's so many things happening in this. Again, I want to slow it down because we think about these developmental domains.
I feel like this needs its own episode.
Right?
Family Jams.
Right. We could do a whole training on family jams. But you got connection, independence, reality, emotional intelligence, and spirituality, right? These are the 5 developmental domains. And we need life-giving experiences in those domains to develop our capacities in those domains. And when we had teenagers coming in, we had the first decade to decade and a half of their life, we didn't have any influence in. And so they had a lot of missed life-giving experiences that left gaps, and a lot of life-robbing experiences that left them wounded in these different areas. And so, we had to pick up where we're at and try to provide life-giving experiences in all these different domains. And a lot of that, was accomplished just by modeling and how we showed up with them
Yeah.
in the life-giving experiences. But then these family jams created they were extensive training grounds for those kinds of experiences. Because what happened in that space is we taught connection. Like, this is how you show up with one another in a trustworthy way in relationship. Like, we're not just going to move past this quickly, because ruptures in relationship matter, and repair in relationship
they're
matters.
The foundation.
Yes, our ability to repair after rupture is a key skill within connection.
Yeah.
Because rupture happens in all relationship. We don't know how to repair. We can't have good relationships, right? And so it's like, when there was rupture, we didn't just sweep it under the rug. We didn't just move past it to keep peace. We didn't just dole out punishment for what happened. We slowed down the process in order to facilitate repair, which also built emotional intelligence in helping them find language and words to describe how they felt.
Yep.
That's a super slow process when you're with kiddos who don't have emotional intelligence, because they didn't grow up around parents helping them develop it.
Yeah.
So
and maybe you haven't helped your kids develop it.
Yeah.
But it's not too late.
Totally not too late. But they would not have language for what it is they were feeling. They wouldn't know how to describe. So it was painfully slow.
Oh, painfully
slow. And I think this is a big takeaway, that it takes a huge time investment with your kiddos in order to develop these things. It just does. There's no way around it. It's a huge time investment. But we slow down the process. And so we're helping kiddos find language for their experience, to be able to share how they were impacted in a situation. And so we're helping them build emotional intelligence, sentence by sentence, as we help them articulate their experience, right? We're promoting independence by giving them permission to have their own thoughts, feelings, and opinions, and saying that matters.
Yeah.
Where you feel violated, or you have preferences in these things, like, these things are valued and deserve to be heard.
Yes.
And we can create space for them. We're implementing limits, like even with a thing with a duck that's going around.
Yes.
It's like, no, you can't just talk over the top of people. You can't just say whatever you want whenever you want. You have to contain yourself and wait your turn. What you have to say matters, and it's valued, and we're going to help you say it and help you find words for it. And we're going to listen intently, and we're going to teach reflective listening, relationship skills, so that, but you're going to wait your turn.
Yep.
There's limits.
Yeah, you will get a chance to share.
But now isn't it? Then, and we keep going around. So we're teaching reality. We're in the space of, when there's a rupture or a violation from one kiddo to another, it's like, yeah, that's not okay. We don't treat people that way. It is not acceptable. It's not tolerated to violate others in that way, to force what you wanted in that situation with disregard for how it impacts other people. That's the reality domain, that we're training them in these slow
and I think
experiences.
I just want to jump in and be like, we had no experience. I had no experience in trying to facilitate. Like, it was just me trying to be obedient to bring the very best of what I knew could be a thing. And I developed the capacity to facilitate these things by facilitating these things. And so, like, we learned it from other mentor couples, but we grow in skill through engaging things. And so it can feel maybe like, if you're watching and you're like, well, that probably was easy for you because you already had the skills, or, you were married to a therapist or whatever No, it was difficult, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I felt that keenly a lot. but I knew I was going to be tenacious and that I wasn't going to let it go until somebody got out of their window of tolerance. And then we just braked and came back because it was so important. And I needed them to know that you can't wait me out. But yeah, I think I just feel important to name, like, you don't jump into this because you have it all together and you know how to do it. You jump into it because it's good and it's what needs done, and you figure it out along the way.
Yeah, and God actually uses the parenting process to mature us, right? Like, it wasn't because we were already equipped and matured in ways that we had this offer. It was the process of parenting that God used to force us into growing in ourself and maturing in ourself in ways. And so there was a mutual maturation process that God was at work to do, where we were helping them mature and the Lord was using them to help us mature. And it was very, challenging and hard and beautiful in how God does that. And I think there's like so much that we could say, and we'll probably shoot some more videos around some of these different parenting pieces. If you think they're useful, you should comment, and if you want to hear more about
there's
something,
anything you want to
we're
talk more
happy
about.
to do that.
I do want to say I'm having a little giggle here as I'm thinking about our bio kiddos and how we don't family jam with our bio kiddos very much, because when they were little, we made them practice these things, but it was such a smaller scale. But now when they come and they're talking to me about things, I'm like, hey, it sounds like we need to have a family jam. And they're like, no, we'll work it out. They go and work it out with their siblings.
Yeah, they have the skills.
Yeah, they do.
Have the capacity. We had to do a lot more of it with our foster and adopted kiddos because they didn't have those skills.
Yeah.
Because we practiced that so much and did so much of that with our bio kiddos at a younger age. By the time they're teenagers, they have those skills and they actually help their friends kind of work through conflict and different things like that. And it's sweet and fun to watch and see them put those things to use. I think, there's a lot that we could say. I kind of want to maybe just summarize a couple of things as we wrap up. And to say, I think we deep dived in a few of these things really to illustrate that the teenage years can be really joyful and a lot of fun, but they don't naturally happen like that.
Yeah.
Like they can be joyful and fun, and they, I think God desires for them to be joyful and fun for us, but there's work and investment and development that makes that possible.
Yes.
And so there's not just like here's some quick tips and tricks. This is not like a TikTok short. Here's 3 things, you do them, and the teenage years are going to be quick and easy, and fun and delightful in every way. The truth is that what it takes for them to be that is a lot of time and a lot of intentionality and a lot of investment in these relational components that then create the context in which for the teenage years to be a real joy. And so you have concepts like, rules without relationship equals rebellion. And so, but when you have that, the relationship through all the things that we've been talking about, we're cultivating those relational connections and skills, and that then the structure of the rules doesn't have to translate into rebellion.
Yeah.
There's principles where, you are learning to transition from control to influence with teenagers. With littles, you're exercising control over nearly every aspect of their life. And there's this gradual progression from total control to no control with adults, where they're full-grown adults doing their own life, making their own choices, and you don't get a say in how they navigate their life because they're adults at that juncture. And so those teenage years, you're pivoting from a relationship of total control to one of influence, not control, and incrementally creating space for more and more control to be held by the teenager and focusing more and more on influence with a hopeful kind of smooth transition of, you maintain voice in their life and they have an appreciation and respect for what you have to offer because you have shown respect and
Right.
given them space to.
They know you're for them.
Yeah.
They know you're wise. They know that you can see bigger than they can see. And so they want your cheering on
Mm-hmm.
in things they feel confident about and things that they feel vulnerable about. And it's a really sweet thing.
Yeah, you teach practical life skills and you make intentional times to have fun together and have bonding experiences where you're playing and having fun together. And you make space to listen and to be able to hear about what's happening in their world and what matters to them, even when it's, hard to maintain consciousness because they want to talk at when you're like something dings in their brain when you're trying to go to bed, like now's the time to come and word vomit, and ramble, my parents, and you're like, dear God, what, help me. So
yeah, I think one thing that this feels totally unrelated, but it feels important to me because I don't think there's a lot of people in the space maybe saying it, but I want to be sure to say it, which is it's perfectly normal to not like your teenager sometimes.
Yep.
Like the personality, the immaturity,
especially a preteen, gosh, middle schoolers.
It's normal. And it's nothing to be ashamed about. I think sometimes we feel ashamed, so we don't talk to our iron sharpeners. We don't talk to our sage circle. And then we just feel isolated. We think we're the only ones. We think we're bad. But if we're real with our people, they're going to tell us, oh, yeah, there was a season I didn't like this kid. I didn't, this was hard. This was whatever. And so we do want to maintain connection during those seasons to whatever degree that we can.
Right.
And so I just want to name that because lest this topic feel like you're always going to enjoy your teenager and that sense of I'm not enjoying my teenager right now, bring up shame. Like those are all pieces of the big puzzle.
Yep, for sure. So much that we could say.
So much.
We love teenagers. We love the teenagers that God's gifted us to foster, to adopt, our bio teenagers. And, we have teenagers in our house all the time. We're grateful and thankful that our home is a place that our kids want to bring their friends and that their friends want to be at. And so we get to have influence and love on and be a part of a lot of kiddos' lives. And that brings us a lot of joy to get to be a part of their stories and do that. But yeah, there's intentionality that's gone into making that true. And we also, when you put that intentionality in and you put in the time and the work, you get to reap the fruit of that.
Yeah.
And so you get to reap the fruit of that investment in these teenage years and going into adult years and have them be a gift and a blessing. And I just want to say for those of you that maybe listen to this and you are in the throes of teenage years and what we're describing is not what you're experiencing. And maybe the enemy would even want to use our words in a way to create shame in your life and story. Maybe around things that as you're listening, maybe you wish you would have done differently, or that you see maybe isn't what's happening. And I just want to encourage you that that's not our heart to shame you, and it's not the heart of your King and Creator. Like there is hope at every juncture in the road. Even if you have adult kiddos that are out of home, the time of influence and opportunity to love on them and to support them and implement intentionality in these relationships is not over. And so be encouraged. Be encouraged if you have young kids and you've heard, war stories and horror stories about the teenage years and you're nervous. It doesn't have to be that way. There are things you can do now that plant seeds that will bear fruit in those years and make them really delightful, still challenging, but still delightful season of life. And there are things you can do today. We have teenagers come in at all different ages, and that we pick up parenting them at that juncture in time. So whatever ages your teenagers are, there are things that you can learn and grow in that are going to benefit you and them and change the course of things. And if you're empty nested and your kids are your parents of adult children now, you still get to have a redemptive voice in their story. And there's so much value that you can offer as you grow and as you mature, and being able to share with them that journey that you're on. So yeah, there isn't a point where it's just hopeless and discouraging. And any voice of shame that wants to make you feel bad about you, about where you're at or what's happened, is just the enemy trying to isolate you and keep you from the beautiful thing that you're on the cusp of leaning into the kind of sage circle and iron sharpening relationships and growth towards maturation that are going to change your life and situation. So don't listen to it. You're okay, and you're going to be okay, and the Lord has good plans for you.